Ethan Carter sat quietly in his luxurious penthouse, the lights from New York's towering skyscrapers streaming through the massive glass wall. A wedding invitation lay on the table, a bitter reminder of a love that once was. Diana, the woman he had loved so deeply, was now about to marry someone else. Though he tried to maintain a composed exterior, Ethan's heart weighed heavily with memories and an emptiness he couldn't shake. Dear friend, if this story has sparked your curiosity and touched your heart, take just a moment to click the subscribe button on our channel. For you, it's a simple click, but for us, it's a priceless motivation to keep creating meaningful and heartfelt stories. Let's spread these beautiful values to even more people together. That afternoon, Ethan decided to step outside, hoping the bustling energy of the city might help him escape his tangled thoughts. The crowded streets of New York carried on, indifferent to the emptiness that lingered within him. As he passed a quiet, weathered corner, his gaze was drawn to a woman huddled on the steps. Her worn clothing and disheveled hair couldn't hide the brightness in her eyes, a fragile yet fierce glimmer of hope. For reasons he couldn't explain, Ethan stopped. His heart softened, a strange and unfamiliar sensation rising within him. "Hello," he said gently, his tone earnest. "I'm Ethan. What's your name?" The woman looked up, startled by the kind greeting from a stranger. "I'm Cassandra," she replied softly, her voice tinged with hesitation. Ethan sat down beside Cassandra, ignoring the curious glances of passers-by. "May I hear your story?" he asked, his eyes radiating an irresistible sincerity. At first, Cassandra hesitated, wary of sharing her pain with someone she didn't know, but Ethan's patience and quiet presence encouraged her to speak. She began to tell her story. Once a promising pianist, Cassandra's life had unraveled after an accident that left her hands damaged. The loss of her passion sent her into a spiral of despair and misfortune, forcing her onto the streets, relying on the kindness of strangers to survive. Ethan listened intently, each word revealing her pain, yet also a resilience that seemed unshakable. As she finished her story, a thought sparked in his mind, an idea so unexpected that it surprised even him. "Cassandra," Ethan began, his eyes now filled with determination. "You would be doing me a great favor if you agreed to accompany me to an event. I'll take care of everything, clothes, shoes, all of it. I just need a companion, and I believe you deserve a day that's special." Cassandra looked at him, her expression a mix of astonishment and confusion. "Why me?" she asked, her voice still tinged with caution. Ethan smiled, warm and genuine. "Because I see something in you that you don't yet see in yourself, strength and worth. And maybe I need that strength right now too." A brief silence fell between them. Cassandra lowered her gaze, reflecting on his unusual offer. Finally, she nodded, her eyes holding a flicker of hope mingled with curiosity. "All right," she said, her voice soft, yet resolute. As Ethan walked away from that corner that day, his heart felt unexpectedly lighter. It was as if he had made a decision that would change everything. Not just for Cassandra, but for himself as well. The next morning, Cassandra stood nervously on the bustling street, waiting in front of a sleek black limousine parked neatly by the curb. The early sunlight danced on the car's glossy windows, a sharp contrast to her worn, outdated clothes. Clutching her tattered handbag tightly, her hands trembled, not just from the crisp morning chill, but from the wave of uncertainty coursing through her. She never imagined she'd find herself in a moment like this. Surreal, strange, and a little terrifying. When the car door opened, Ethan stepped out, his gentle smile paired with the calm confidence of someone who always seemed in control. "Ready?" he asked, his deep, soothing voice easing some of the tension in her chest. Cassandra nodded, trying to suppress her unease. "I think so." They arrived at a sprawling mansion nestled in an affluent neighborhood, where tree-lined streets and opulent homes radiated wealth and elegance. Cassandra stared at the surroundings in awe, overwhelmed by the unfamiliar grandeur. "This place. It's beautiful," she whispered, her eyes wide with wonder. Ethan led her inside, where a team of stylists and attendants awaited them. They wore polished uniforms and cheerful expressions, though their gazes flickered briefly with curiosity as they noticed Cassandra's modest appearance. A woman, likely the lead stylist, raised an eyebrow at Cassandra's shabby attire, but quickly masked her reaction with professional composure. "Cassandra," Ethan said warmly, his eyes full of encouragement. "They'll help you choose something stunning to wear. Relax, it's your day." Cassandra felt as if the entire world was revolving around her. She stepped hesitantly into the room, which was filled with stunning gowns and sparkling accessories. The staff quickly got to work, bustling around with measuring tapes, color swatches, and trays of gleaming jewelry. At first, Cassandra felt out of place, awkward and unsure. She stood still, clutching her hands tightly, her eyes darting around like a lost child in an unfamiliar garden. But slowly, the team's enthusiasm, paired with Ethan's gentle reassurance, began to chip away at her nervousness. They tried on countless dresses, each one carrying a small dream within its seams. When Cassandra slipped into an elegant sapphire blue gown, the room fell silent. The dress brought out her hidden grace, revealing a beauty that left the entire team in awe. Cassandra turned to look at herself in the mirror, her eyes wide with astonishment and emotion. Is this really me?" she whispered, her voice trembling with disbelief and wonder. Ethan, standing nearby, observed the moment with soft, kind eyes. He stepped closer and said in a voice filled with sincerity, "Cassandra, this has always been you. You're just seeing it more clearly now." Tears welled up in Cassandra's eyes. She turned away, trying to hide the emotions threatening to spill over. "I don't even know what to say," she murmured, her voice shaky. "No one has ever done anything like this for me." "You don't have to say anything," Ethan replied, a genuine smile lighting up his face. "Just remember, you deserve all of this and more." As Cassandra stepped out of the mansion, she felt transformed. The gown didn't just change her outward appearance. It awakened a sense of inner strength, a feeling she hadn't experienced in years. In the limousine, as they headed back toward the city, Ethan glanced at Cassandra in the rearview mirror. "Are you ready?" he asked, as though ensuring she was prepared for the evening ahead. Cassandra smiled, a smile she hadn't worn in what felt like a lifetime. "I think, for the first time, I actually feel ready." Ethan nodded, his heart feeling lighter. Yet neither of them could anticipate what awaited them at the event. It would test their trust, emotions, and the fragile connection they had only just begun to build. The glamorous evening arrived faster than Cassandra had anticipated. The limousine pulled up in front of an opulent hotel, its grand chandeliers casting a dazzling glow throughout the lobby. Standing beside Ethan, Cassandra's hands trembled slightly as she watched elegantly dressed guests pass through the gilded doors. The air of sophistication and luxury felt surreal, as if she had wandered into an unfamiliar dream. Ethan turned to her, offering a warm and reassuring smile. "Don't worry. Just be yourself, Cassandra. You're ready for this." Cassandra took a deep breath, steadying herself. "I'll try," she replied, her eyes reflecting a mix of determination and nervous uncertainty. As they stepped inside, the room seemed to pause for a moment. All eyes turned toward Cassandra, the woman who walked with a radiant elegance yet carried an air of humility and mystery. Soft murmurs rippled through the crowd. Someone whispered, "Who is she?" While another speculated, "An actress, a model perhaps." Cassandra held her head high, but her heart was pounding in her chest. She could feel the curiosity, the judgmental stares circling her like an invisible net. Ethan's gentle touch on her elbow broke through her tension, a small gesture that offered surprising comfort. "Are you all right?" he murmured, his voice tender and calming. Cassandra gave a slight nod, forcing a smile. "I'm fine," she replied, though her voice trembled ever so slightly. As they ventured deeper into the ballroom, Cassandra finally spotted Diana, the woman who had once been at the center of Ethan's story. Diana stood gracefully, radiant in her perfect wedding gown, her smile warm as she greeted the guests. But when her eyes met Ethan and Cassandra, that smile faltered, her expression shifting briefly to confusion and then to cautious scrutiny. Diana approached them, her demeanor polite, but laced with subtle tension. "Ethan," she began, her voice light but edged with sharpness. "What a surprise to see you here. And this is?" Ethan placed a reassuring hand on Cassandra's shoulder, a gesture both affectionate and proud. "This is Cassandra, my companion for the evening," he said, his voice steady and warm. Diana's gaze flickered over Cassandra, assessing her from head to toe, her eyes betraying a hint of skepticism. "Lovely to meet you," Diana said with a thin smile. "You're certainly striking." Cassandra could feel the weight of Diana's judgment in her words, but she remained composed. "Thank you," Cassandra replied, her voice soft yet firm. "Your wedding is beautiful. I'm sure this is a day to remember." Diana raised an eyebrow, visibly taken aback by Cassandra's calm and poised response. But before she could formulate a reply, another voice interrupted. A middle-aged man with an air of authority approached them. It was Harold, a business associate of Diana's family and one of the most influential figures at the event. His eyes locked onto Cassandra, his brows furrowing in recognition. "Cassandra, aren't you the pianist who performed at our conference some years ago?" he asked, his voice laced with surprise. The room seemed to hold its breath. Curious glances sharpened, cutting through the atmosphere as everyone's attention zeroed in on her. Cassandra felt exposed, as though her carefully buried past was being unearthed piece by piece under their scrutiny. "Yes," Cassandra replied, her tone steady despite the tension. "But that was a long time ago." Harold smirked, as though savoring her discomfort. "A shame you're no longer at the top of your game," he remarked, his voice tinged with condescension. "I heard you left your career behind. It seems life hasn't been kind to you." His words struck at Cassandra's pride like a dagger, but she refused to let her composure falter. Before she could respond, Ethan's voice cut through the room, cold and sharp. "Harold, if I'm not mistaken, she was celebrated at that very conference of yours. Perhaps, instead of passing judgment, you should recognize and respect her talent." The room fell into a tense silence. Cassandra's heart swelled, not just because Ethan had defended her, but because he saw her worth. A worth she had long forgotten. A middle-aged man with an air of authority approached them. It was Harold, a business associate of Diana's family and one of the most influential figures at the event. His eyes locked onto Cassandra, his brows furrowing in recognition. "Cassandra, aren't you the pianist who performed at our conference some years ago?" he asked, his voice laced with surprise. The room seemed to hold its breath. Curious glances sharpened, cutting through the atmosphere as everyone's attention zeroed in on her. Cassandra felt exposed, as though her carefully buried past was being unearthed piece by piece under their scrutiny. "Yes," Cassandra replied, her tone steady despite the tension. "But that was a long time ago." Harold smirked, as though savoring her discomfort. "A shame you're no longer at the top of your game," he remarked, his voice tinged with condescension. "I heard you left your career behind. It seems life hasn't been kind to you." His words struck at Cassandra's pride like a dagger, but she refused to let her composure falter. Before she could respond, Ethan's voice cut through the room, cold and sharp. "Harold, if I'm not mistaken, she was celebrated at that very conference of yours. Perhaps, instead of passing judgment, you should recognize and respect her talent." The room fell into a tense silence. Cassandra's heart swelled, not just because Ethan had defended her, but because he saw her worth, a worth she had long forgotten. Diana, who had been quietly observing the entire exchange, couldn't conceal her growing discomfort. Cassandra's poise and confidence made her feel inexplicably small. This was far from what she had anticipated. She had envisioned Ethan arriving alone, perhaps carrying an air of sorrow or regret. Instead, he seemed happier than she had ever seen him. A swirl of mixed emotions churned within Diana. A quiet storm brewing just beneath the surface, waiting to erupt. The atmosphere of the party began to shift. Cassandra, who had entered as an out-of-place stranger, now commanded the room with her newfound confidence and calm demeanor. Yet, the true challenge awaited her. And Ethan, just ahead. The room grew heavier with tension after Ethan's intervention. Cassandra could feel the weight of every gaze on her, as if each one sought to peel back the layers of her painful past. But she refused to let it unnerve her. She had survived the darkest days of her life, and standing here, in this grand room, she knew she wouldn't allow anyone to strip her of her dignity ever again. Diana stepped closer, her eyes flickering with irritation mixed with a tinge of jealousy. "Ethan," she began, her voice cold yet slightly unsteady. "You've surprised me. I didn't expect you to show up, and certainly not with Cassandra." Cassandra caught the subtle disdain hidden in Diana's words, but she responded with a calm, measured smile. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Diana. I think Ethan wanted to share this evening with someone who could truly appreciate it," she replied, her tone gentle yet firm, carrying an unspoken declaration that she was not someone to be dismissed. Diana's brow furrowed, a brief silence passing before she spoke again. "Cassandra, I don't know how long you've known Ethan, but he's a complicated man. I just hope you don't feel used." Ethan stepped forward, his voice lowering but steady with conviction. "Diana, I don't think this is the place to question my intentions. Cassandra is someone who deserves respect, and I didn't invite her here to be subjected to thinly veiled judgments." The story seemed to extend beyond the strained relationship between Diana and Ethan. As Diana stepped back, Harold, the older man with a piercing gaze, spoke up again, his tone dripping with judgment. "Ethan, do you really think bringing her here was a good idea? This isn't the kind of place for someone like her." His words landed like a blow to Cassandra's pride. But before she could respond, Ethan's voice rang out, calm yet resolute. "Harold, the most shameful thing tonight isn't Cassandra's presence. It's your judgment. Cassandra was once one of the finest pianists. She's endured things most of us couldn't begin to understand. If anyone here deserves respect, it's her." The room fell silent, but it wasn't an uncomfortable silence. Instead, it was a moment of introspection. Some guests began to nod, quietly acknowledging the truth in Ethan's words. Cassandra, her eyes glistening with emotion, stepped forward. "Mr. Harold," she said, her voice calm, yet filled with undeniable strength. "I don't need your acceptance or anyone else's. I've been to the lowest depths, and it taught me that a person's worth isn't measured by what they own, but by how they rise from adversity. Tonight, I'm not here to seek approval. I'm here to prove that I won't be defined by my circumstances." Her words didn't just resonate with Ethan, they left the entire room captivated. The curious stares from earlier shifted, one by one, into looks of genuine respect and admiration. Diana, standing nearby, could no longer conceal the jealousy and disappointment bubbling within her. Cassandra's unwavering strength and the unconditional support Ethan gave her left Diana feeling as though she was losing something irreplaceable. She stepped forward, attempting to regain her composure. "Ethan," she said, her voice low, "I think you've changed more than I imagined, but I'm not sure if that's a good thing." Ethan smiled, but it was a smile free of regret or lingering pain. "Diana, change is a good thing. Sometimes, to find what truly matters, we have to let go of what we once thought we couldn't live without." Diana stared at him, her eyes a storm of conflicting emotions. In that moment, she realized he had completely moved on, not just in his actions, but in his heart. She nodded, her lips pressed into a thin line, and quietly stepped back into the crowd, blending in with the other guests. As the evening unfolded, Ethan led Cassandra out onto the balcony, where the city lights sparkled like scattered jewels against the night sky. "Cassandra," he began, his voice low and sincere, "I don't know how much I've learned from you, but one thing is certain. Your strength has inspired me in ways I never imagined." Cassandra turned to him, her eyes reflecting a gentle warmth Ethan had never seen before. "Ethan, thank you for believing in me. I don't know what the future holds, but for the first time in years, I feel like I have the right to dream again." They stood there together, wrapped in a silence that spoke volumes, as if the world beyond the balcony had ceased to matter. Night had fallen, but the dazzling lights of the luxurious hotel still burned brightly, as if determined to hold on to the evening's grandeur. Cassandra leaned against the balcony railing, gazing at the steady flow of traffic below. The cool air painted a rosy hue on her cheeks, but within her, a strange warmth began to bloom. Ethan stepped out from the ballroom, 2 glasses of wine in hand. He approached her, placing one gently in her grasp. "This is for a toast," he said, his voice soft with a hint of humor. "A toast to what?" Cassandra asked, taking a small sip. "A toast to you," Ethan replied, his eyes glimmering with sincerity. "For making it through tonight so gracefully. And a toast to me, for having the privilege of standing beside someone as strong as you." Cassandra laughed softly, the sound light yet filled with emotion. "Ethan, I'm not as strong as you think. Tonight was really hard." Ethan shook his head, his gaze locking with hers, piercing through her doubts. "Cassandra, don't you see? Strength isn't about not feeling fear or pain. Strength is about facing judgmental stares and refusing to crumble under them. It's about standing tall when someone tries to tear you down. And tonight, you did exactly that, with more grace and dignity than most could ever muster." Cassandra turned to Ethan, her eyes glistening with tears, not of sadness, but of deep emotion. "Ethan, do you know something? For the first time in years, I don't feel invisible anymore. Tonight, as I stood there under all those judgmental gazes, I realized that my worth isn't defined by how others perceive me. You gave me the chance to see that, and I don't even know how to thank you." Ethan smiled, setting his glass down as he met her gaze with a tenderness that seemed to reach into her soul. "You don't need to thank me, Cassandra. I didn't do this just for you. I did it for myself too. You've reminded me that sometimes, to truly live, we need to look beyond what's familiar and dare to face the challenges we never thought we could." A gentle silence settled between them, one that wasn't awkward, but rather filled with unspoken understanding. It was the quiet of 2 kindred spirits, finding solace and strength in one another. As they returned to the ballroom, the crowd had thinned, and the space felt quieter, more subdued. Diana, radiant in her pristine white wedding gown, stood in a corner, her eyes fixed on Ethan and Cassandra. She approached them, her movements graceful, but her gaze carried a storm of conflicted emotions. "Ethan," she began, her voice soft but heavy with meaning, "I want to offer my congratulations. Perhaps you found what you truly deserve." Ethan looked at Diana, his expression calm, though a flicker of regret passed through his eyes. "Thank you, Diana. I hope you find happiness too. We all deserve that." Diana smiled, a bittersweet but genuine smile. "I think I finally realized something. Some things in life can't be reclaimed, but that doesn't mean we can't keep moving forward." Cassandra stood quietly by Ethan's side, listening to their exchange. She could sense the closure of an old chapter, but also the promise of a new beginning. As the evening came to an end, Ethan offered to take Cassandra home. They sat in the limousine, the city lights streaming past the windows like fleeting memories. "Cassandra," Ethan began, breaking the silence. "I don't want tonight to just be a memory. I want to help you rediscover yourself. Not the Cassandra you were, but the version of yourself you've always wanted to become." Cassandra turned to him, her eyes shimmering with emotion. "Ethan, I don't know what the future holds, but if there's one thing I'm sure of, it's that I want to stand on my own 2 feet again. And you've given me the motivation to start." Ethan nodded, a gentle smile on his lips. "I have no doubt you will, and I'll always be here if you need me." The car rolled on, carrying 2 individuals with newfound dreams. Neither could predict what the future might hold, but in that moment, they both felt one undeniable thing: hope. In the days following the gala, Cassandra woke up in the small apartment Ethan had temporarily rented for her. It wasn't out of pity, but because he wanted her to have a safe space to rebuild her life. Sunlight poured through the window, casting a warm glow on the sapphire blue gown she had carefully hung in the corner of the room. A vivid reminder that the evening wasn't just a fleeting dream, but the beginning of a new chapter in her life. One morning, Ethan arrived with a bright smile, holding a stack of papers in his hands. "Cassandra, I have an idea," he said, his voice brimming with enthusiasm. "I've reached out to some friends in the music industry. There's an upcoming charity concert, and they're looking for talents who've been overlooked or forgotten. I think this could be your chance." Cassandra looked at him, her eyes wide with surprise and emotion. "Ethan, do you really think I can do it? I've lost so many years, and these hands—" She hesitated, clasping her hands tightly as if to hide the scars of her past. Ethan placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, his gaze steady and unwavering. "Cassandra, what makes you extraordinary isn't your hands. It's your heart. Your music isn't just about notes on a page. It's your story, your way of touching the hearts of others. I believe you can do this, not for me, but for yourself." His words washed over her like a warm tide, filling the empty corners of her heart. She took a deep breath, her eyes lighting up with a determination she thought she had lost long ago. "All right," she whispered, her voice trembling but resolute. "I'll try." The night of the concert arrived faster than Cassandra had anticipated. She stood backstage, her heart racing as the hum of the audience filled the theater. A wave of nervousness surged within her, but alongside it was a newfound strength, the strength of believing in herself. Ethan entered, holding a small bouquet of flowers. "Cassandra, no matter what happens out there, remember how far you've come. Just be yourself." Cassandra smiled, her eyes brimming with emotion. "Thank you, Ethan. You didn't just give me a chance, you helped me find myself again." As she stepped onto the stage, the bright lights illuminated her, and a hush fell over the room. Sitting down at the piano, her hands trembled slightly as they hovered over the keys. But the moment the first note sounded, all her fears melted away. Cassandra wasn't just playing a piece of music. She was telling her story, a story of loss, resilience, and rebirth. Each note was a confession, a thank you, and a promise to herself that she would never return to that place of darkness. When the final note faded, the room was enveloped in silence for a brief moment, before erupting into thunderous applause. Cassandra sat there, stunned and overwhelmed by the audience's reception. A single tear slid down her cheek, not of sorrow, but of the profound happiness she had longed for all this time. As Cassandra stepped off the stage, Ethan was there waiting, his eyes brimming with pride. "I told you," he said with a gentle smile. "You've always had this strength within you." Cassandra clutched the bouquet of flowers the audience had given her, her eyes shimmering with happiness. "Ethan, thank you for everything. But the most important thing you've taught me isn't how to face an audience. It's how to face myself." Ethan smiled, though this time there was a hint of humility in it. Cassandra, I'm just a small part of your journey. The most incredible thing is that you've made it through the hardest parts all on your own. A week after the concert, Cassandra received an invitation from a major music production company to collaborate on a special project. Yet, what brought her the most joy wasn't the offers flooding in. It was the feeling of rediscovering her own worth. During a casual weekend conversation, Ethan asked her, "So, what's next for you?" Cassandra smiled, her eyes shining with newfound confidence. "To keep moving forward. And if possible, I want to use my music to help others like me, those who once believed they had no hope left." Ethan nodded, a sense of relief and pride washing over him. He knew that their chance encounter had not only transformed Cassandra's life, but his own as well. As they stepped outside, the brilliant sunlight of a new morning lit the path ahead. Their journey continued. A journey filled not just with hope, but with endless new possibilities.